Thanks. So thanks for joining us. My name is Eric Davis. I'm with the Common Ground program with Conservation Nebraska. And we have some great speakers to hopefully answer some questions about your questions about electric vehicles. I know I have been studying electric vehicles myself for probably about over a year, just looking and learning and reading constantly, almost daily, on what the new tech is, what companies bringing out a new electric vehicle. So there's so much to learn. It's a very large subject. I really want to have an event. I think I found some good people to answer the questions that I have and you probably have as well. So I'll turn it over to Cliff and he can introduce Don and Jeff, and they can give you a little background on each of them.
My name is Cliff Mesner. I'm a real estate developer from Central City, Nebraska, and I drive electric vehicles all across the state with that work. So I've kind of become an advocate. I have with me Don Cox. Don is far and away the most knowledgeable and experienced EV person in the state. Don became familiar with electric vehicles when he was teaching electronic engineering at Stanford. Started driving them when no one else was. He is now back in Nebraska and teaches a class in electric vehicles at the university now as part of his retirement. Jeff Berggren is with us. Jeff is a Tesla driver as well and is also with GenPro Energy, a solar developer. So he is going to answer some solar questions for us. So I'm going to start it off with some photos and go through some things. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We're going to try and answer the questions kind of as we go. We want to be talking about what your interests are. So if I can share my screen here now. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. We're going to talk a little bit about our cars. Now we're going to talk some about the environmental side of things because this is a league presentation. Then we're going to talk about range anxiety, which is a topic that always comes up when we talk about electric cars. Some of the choice of cars, we're going to talk about chargers some. We're going to talk about planning when you drive an electric car and the apps you can use for that. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the self-driving and the software updates, which is an ongoing thing. These are my cars. I have a Tesla Model X and a Model 3 and a Model Y. Don has, two Roadsters and two Model S. And Jeff has a Model S. Both Don and Jeff have Cybertrucks on order, I think. Neither one of them need them, but they both have ordered them. So you're going to learn that we are kind of a Tesla enthusiasts. And that's not because necessarily are tied to Tesla, but because frankly, Tesla is the leader and they're at least a decade ahead of everybody else. So that's kind of where we start. When we decided we were going to move to an electric car, we had no choice really but to go with the Tesla because the other cars just didn't have the range that we needed for our driving in Nebraska. The rest of the world is going to catch up. This is off of the General Motors website. They start their website. If you go into General Motors, they're talking about their commitment to electrification. And they are saying that they're going to put every driver in an electric vehicle. They're supposed to have 30 of them out in 5 years. And by, I think, 2035, they're saying they'll be done with gasoline engines altogether. So you're going to see it happening with the other car manufacturers. And you'll see a lot of things that are very similar. General Motors is coming out with what they call the Ultium Platform, which is they're going to build all their electric vehicles on the same platform. If you look at this idea, the platform on the lower right is General Motors. The platform on the upper left is Tesla's. It's the same concept. They're doing the same thing. They're doing it because it makes sense. It's what works with the system. You'll see a lot of stuff, I think, that's patterned. This is a Tesla Model S and a Lucid Air Touring. If you look at the two cars, they're pretty similar. And there's a reason for that. This is a copy of the Ford Mustang Mach-E and a Tesla Model Y. Again, there's just a lot of similarities to them. Frankly, if you look at, you can trace it all the way back really to the Prius. If you look at a Tesla Model 3 and the Prius, you'll see a lot of similarities. And that's because there's been a move towards efficiency. And drag makes a difference. And it shows up more in electric cars, and they're just moving to cars that are more efficient. On the inside, it'll be won't all be the same. If you look at these two, the Tesla is dominated by a large screen to the right with a leather covered wheel with a Tesla T on it, whereas the Mustang has a large screen to the right with a leather covered wheel with a Mustang on it. You're just going to see a lot of things that are very similar going forward because it's what makes sense. I want to talk a little bit about carbon, because carbon reduction is one of the things that's really pushing this. When you take a look at the carbon footprint for the typical household, you'll notice that the motor vehicle is a big piece of it. And if you can eliminate that carbon, you've done a significant thing to reduce your carbon footprint. And the electric vehicle does that for you. Even if you do it, there's a theory out there, it's called the long tailpipe theory. The concept is if you're burning coal instead of using renewables, you're still putting carbon in the air. While that's true, there's still a significant reduction in the amount of carbon you're putting in the air, because even the coal-fired electric plants are more efficient than internal combustion engines. If you do solar power with an electric car, you can eliminate your carbon footprint from transportation almost entirely. What we've done is we've eliminated both the motor fuel and we have solar that powers our house. So that allows you to take a very significant reduction in the carbon footprint of your home. I wanted to talk a little bit about the cost of that. Solar has really come a long ways with this. If you put 6 425 watt panels on your roof, that's about 2.5 kilowatts of solar. That'll produce 3,700 kilowatt hours a year. The Model 3 is rated at 4.2 miles per kilowatt hour. I don't think it gets quite that in real life, but that's what it's rated at. That would be 15,000 miles a year. That means that 6 panels on your roof would literally power a car 15,000 miles a year. I always think that's incredulous when I see that, but I make people run the math for me, and it's the way it comes out. So if you're talking about comparing that with an average car, which gets 24 miles to the gallon, you're replacing 633 gallons a year at $2.86, which is the current cost. That's saving you about $1,800 a year in gasoline costs. And over a 30-year period, it's saving you about $54,000. So one of the things that's the second thing that's really pushing electric vehicles is the cost savings. It's a carbon reduction, but it's also a big cost savings. We're not necessarily saying you should put solar panels on your roof, but Jeff and I are saying somebody should put solar panels up. Either you should do it on your roof or your utility company should do it. This is Jeff's car in front of a solar array that they've done out in Central City. The array behind him would actually power 80 Teslas, 15,000 miles a year. And wind power is even better in some regards. Polk Power District has one wind tower. They purchased a Tesla Model 3, and when they did the math, they figured out that their wind tower would power 4,000 Model 3s, 10,000 miles a year. So when you compare that with what gasoline would cost and all the other benefits, it makes a lot of sense. Range anxiety.
Cliff, before you go, I do have a question. Dave Marsh asked a question about Volkswagen's ID4. He says he currently drives a Volkswagen wagon, and he's just curious if you're familiar with it, and do you think, basically, or what you think of the ID4, and would it be able to haul, things around with the, if you know about that? And he's also said he just installed a 10 kW solar system on his place last year. So awesome for that.
I'm not familiar with that car. Don, are you?
I have not seen an ID4 yet. I don't know how it compares to those other cars.
I think it's pretty close to a Model 3. I think it's got about 250 miles of range, if I remember correctly, and it's going to cost around $40,000.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I know about them. Jeff is the same. I don't know about their specs completely, but he says Omaha has one available at the Volkswagen dealership, apparently. So good to know.
We're going to see more and more of the cars coming along. We just the part of what's happening here is that we all bought our cars 5 years ago, and 5 years ago there just weren't a lot of choices out there, particularly if you're going great distance. We travel all across Nebraska and Kansas, so range is important to us. Don has taken cars literally from coast to coast, so he has a lot of experience with the long range travel. We solved the range anxiety problem for ourselves because we had 3 cars. I had one, my wife had one, and we had one for the business. And my wife just said, surely we can have one electric car, and we'll take it where on the short trips, and we'll keep our gas cars and take those on the long trips. And that made sense. So I eventually conceded and we went out and bought an electric car. What happened almost immediately was if we couldn't take the electric car, we didn't go. And it was just more fun to drive. It was easier to drive. And we just found ways to work our way through the range anxiety. The first thing to remember is that I start every day with 260 miles on my car. I plug it in every night. I go out in the morning. There's 260 miles on the car. How many days out of a week do you drive more than 260 miles? And the answer usually is not very many. It's very seldom that you're actually taking off and doing the long distance travel. So most of the time, the issue just simply doesn't come up. What you find out is kind of a nuisance is not worrying about the range. What's a nuisance is when you have to stop at the gas station and fill up with gas and pay a bunch of money. The new Model S actually has a range of up to 525 miles, which also kind of eliminates a lot of the range anxiety issues. This is some information that Don sent me on the new cars, and you can see the range on them. We'll flip down to this and come back. The longest cars are 5 times the shortest ones. So you need to pick a car that kind of matches up with the driving you have. You can see I've highlighted the Teslas, and again, that is to show, kind of why we ended up going with the Teslas, because we had to have some range. I think the others that are there on that left side, the Lucid Airs, I don't think are available yet. The Rivians aren't available yet. So the first longer range vehicle that's there is the Ford Mustang, which has just been out, and the Chevy Bolt. And as far as I know, those are good cars. I just don't have a lot of experience with them. I want to talk.
And I think it will be easy for to answer. Toyota Prius has a brake system which recharges the battery. She's asking, does the Tesla Model S have the same system?
Yes, there's regenerative braking. Anytime you take your foot off the accelerator, it uses the momentum of the car to generate the battery. If you take it up in the mountains, it's kind of shocking. I like to take mine out to Estes Park and go up on Trail Ridge Road. And on the way up, it uses an awful lot of battery. And on the way down, it charges all the way down. And by the time you get to the bottom, you've lost about 20% of it in that exchange. But all you have to do is make it to the top. I think we need to talk about rated range and projected range and the effect of speed and wind and temperature on that. When you're in your car and you put it on the energy screen, it will show you up here what is the rated range that you're supposed to get, 251 miles. On the right side over here, it will show you the projected range based on the last 5, 15, or 30 miles of driving, so that you kind of know what's really going to happen, which is often different from what's rated. And what changes that, what really affects that is temperature and speed. So let's look over here at 60 miles an hour, for example. This is a Model S with a 100 kilowatt hour battery in it. If you're going 60 miles an hour, it will get almost 400 miles at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So here in Hawaii, that's pretty much what you get because it's always very close to 68 degrees. But the same car, same battery, if the temperature is below 32 or down around 32 degrees, you only get 300 miles. So there's 100 miles difference just based on the battery. And that's because the batteries just aren't as efficient in the cold weather. The other thing that affects it dramatically is wind loading, which is a function of speed. So at 60 miles an hour, it's getting a little less than 400 miles. At 40 miles an hour, it's getting about 475 miles. If you're out on the interstate and you pass a Tesla that's going slowly, it's because he's low on battery and he's slowing down in order to get more range. This has proved helpful for Jeff because Jeff's had to worry about his range, and he hasn't gotten nearly as many tickets with his Tesla as he had before. So it saved him a lot in insurance, hasn't it, Jeff?
That is a true statement.
But here's part of what you need to understand about speed. Speed is about wind loading, and wind loading loads exponentially. So the faster you go, the greater the wind loading. But your car doesn't know whether it's going 60 miles an hour or it's going 40 miles an hour into a 20 mile an hour wind. So when we talk about speed, it's airspeed. What's it doing with the wind? So it makes a huge difference whether you're going with the wind or you're going against the wind. If you're going 60 miles an hour with a 20 mile an hour wind behind you, you're going to get 425 miles. If you're going 60 miles an hour into a 20 mile an hour wind, you're only going to get about 300 miles. So wind is significant. Don, I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that this is the same phenomenon that you see in a gas car. You're just more aware of it in an electric car because cars are more efficient. Is that right?
That's what I always say. That's what I always say. Yes. Gas cars are so inefficient, you don't see these things, but these cars are so efficient that you always see a lot of things that you don't see otherwise in a gas car.
Let's talk a little bit about chargers. Not all chargers are created equal. There are DC fast chargers that are out there, and they're designed to fill a car to 80% in 20 to 40 minutes and to 100% in 60 to 90 minutes. You'll notice that slows down. That's because on a fast charger, they start trickle charging at the end. So if you go in with a battery that's nearly out, it'll fill up in a hurry to about 80%, and then it slows down. So a lot of times the easiest way to travel is to bounce down the interstate on the lower 2/3 of the battery, because that's what you can fill up the quickest, and it's easier just to make another stop and put another 80% in than it is to go ahead and fill it on up. Are we getting some questions here?
Yeah, we got a few questions here. We got quite a bit. So Nancy Meyer, they have a 2015 Model S and a 2020 Chevy Bolt, and they have 5 kilowatt solar array. So they are asking, talk about the best configuration for EVs plus home solar, given that Tesla has changed its strategy on power walls. And also want to know location of charging stations. I don't know if you're going to talk about that later, because they found a few dead zones in their trips. And even with Tesla's longer range, it's, kind of a issue. And so we'll go answer that question, those questions there.
Um, the strategy with the Tesla and the power walls, I don't think we've seen the full story there. In my opinion, Tesla is still hiding the ball just a little bit. Got some power walls ordered for my house just because I want to see how they work. SWT in Lincoln is now a registered Powerwall dealer. They're getting some of those and getting them installed. There who's coming out to my area. The Powerwalls at this point will talk to the solar and they'll also talk to the car. So the Powerwall will charge the Tesla. And I think what you're going to see is they're going to have the solar charge the Powerwall and reserve it there so that you're not putting anything back on the grid, and then from the Powerwall to the car when the car is plugged in. My best guess is that you're going to see them start to use the Powerwall is designed to back up the house. I think the car will be allowed to back up the Powerwall. So that if you have 10 kilowatt hours or 20 kilowatt hours of Powerwall in your garage and 200 kilowatt hours in your car, I think you'll be able to use the kilowatt hours in the car to also back up the house. But I don't know that for sure. I asked Tesla about it, and their response was, quote, that technology has not been released yet. But that leads me to believe that it's coming, that they figured out that that's the logical way to do it. So I think you're really positioned yourself well if you've got the solar, the Powerwall, and the Tesla. I think those will all work together, both to make sure you're getting maximum efficiency out of your solar into your car, and that you're getting the backup for your house that you need.
Are all car dealerships able to work on electric cars? Is a question from Kathy Jensen. So.
No. I think they're pretty much dealer specific at this point. And it's frankly a problem in Nebraska because the state legislature has not allowed Tesla to put a service facility in the state of Nebraska because Tesla doesn't sell through dealerships. So the state of Nebraska doesn't allow Tesla to even have a service station here. So if you want to have a Tesla service, you have to take it to Council Bluffs. Fortunately, there's not a lot of service involved because you don't have oil changes, you don't have transmissions, you've only got about 20 moving parts in the entire car. So you don't have a lot of problems with the service. I didn't service my Model X until it had 28,000 miles on it. And when I serviced it, all they did was change the air filters. That's cool. it's been a bit of a frustration that we're buying cars and the state of Nebraska won't let somebody in the state service them.
I might weigh in a little bit, Cliff. Tesla does come to your house too if it's warranty work or other things. They've come to my house and fixed several little things on my car. And then the Cadillac dealers were given a choice at the first of the year. Cadillac's going to go all electric along, as part of GM. The dealer had to put in $250,000 for equipment upgrade and training. So they're ready for their EVs. And I know that the dealership here in Grand Island did put up the money to do that. So they're getting ready. It'll be brand specific for quite a while, I think, but they're getting ready as these things are coming out.
Thank you, Jeff. I think that definitely helps answer Kathy's question, since I know she's in Hastings area. I got another question. How does charging the car impact your electricity bill? You have solar on your at your place, Cliff, but to answer the people that may not have solar, how does it impact the electricity bill there?
Jeff, maybe you're the one who should answer this, but in Central City, we're paying roughly 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you put 100 kilowatt hours on a car, you're putting $10 into it. So you're putting $10 into 300 miles, which is about 3 cents a mile, which is considerably cheaper than buying the gas.
That's pretty close. I drive about 70 miles a day, and I'd say it's right around $2.50.
Okay. I'll let you go, continue, and we'll answer some more questions later.
Okay. We would talk a little bit about the DC fast chargers. There's level 2 and level 1 chargers out there. Level 2 chargers, there's a lot of variation in them because it depends how they wire them. They're showing output anywhere from 3 kilowatts to 19 kilowatts. That's a pretty significant variation. So it's a little bit, you kind of need to figure out what each one of them has if you're going to use them. We see the level 2 chargers, frankly, as safety nets. If I'm going on a long drive, I don't want to have to stop on a level 2 charger, but it's really nice to know it's there if I run into a wind and I need to pick up a few extra miles on the way home. But they don't charge fast enough that you won't spend a lot of time on them if you can avoid it. Destination chargers, home chargers, electric outlets, those are all things you'll hear, but it's really the kind of 3 levels of the chargers. Like I said before, 90% of the charging is done at home. So what we have is the Tesla wall packs. We have 2 of these in our garage, 1 for each Tesla. You can put now up to 16 of them in sequence, all on the same circuit. And that's what we do most of our charging with. It couldn't be simpler. You simply take the cord, press the button, the latch opens on the car, you plug it in and go on. I can do it easier than I can with my cell phone because I can do it with one hand. It takes 2 hands to plug it into the cell phone. But with my car, I can do it with one hand. I think that the utility companies are really relying on the fact that that's going to be the biggest charging event going forward. They're not looking for people to go to the superchargers to charge. MPPD at this point has put an incentive in to put either wiring or conduit at least to put in wiring for new construction. And we do new construction all across a couple of states. So we always put in, at this point, we're always putting in a place to plug in for for electric cars. Jeff, I think is still using, you're just using a 110 plug, aren't you?
Yeah, like I said, I drive about 70 miles to the office. It's about 30 miles one way. And then I only live about a mile from the supercharger here in Grand Island. So I was getting ready to put my charger up, and the night before I just plugged it into the wall to see what I would get. And it gets between 4 and 5 miles per hour. So if I get home at 5 or 6 at night, I plug it in. By the time I leave at 7:30 the next morning, I'm back up to full. So I haven't even put the charger on. My car is old enough that it still has the grandfather free supercharging. So if I'm getting ready for a something, I just pop down the road and hit the supercharger or hit it on my way home.
If you're out traveling, Tesla has an adapter, a mobile adapter that plugs into the car, and then you can buy plugs for whatever you want, for a 110 or for 220. They've got half a dozen different connectors that you can use with this, so you can plug your car in wherever you need to. We were heading up into the Sandhills last year, up to a golf course up there, and we knew we were going to need some charge to come back home. The charger we went to, Electrify America charge, wasn't working, so we knew we were going to need some. I had a cord. I thought, well, I can just plug it into 110, and so I was getting ready to plug it into 110, and we noticed that there was another outlet over there that on the side of the pump building, and it was a 240 outlet. We said, can we plug in there? They said, yeah. We switched the adapter, plugged into that, and we were getting 45 miles of charge an hour. So there's always something out there to do it. This is the most common adapter. This is adapter to plug into the J1772s, which is what ChargePoint has. That's the adapter that Jeff uses with his 110, just to plug into the wall. Let's talk a little bit about routing, because this is important as you try and figure out where you want to go. And again, my experience is with Teslas, but I think the others are very similar from what I've seen. When you get in, you can input into the screen where you want to go. You can type it in, you can do a voice command that says, take me to an address, or take me to a business, or take me to the nearest coffee shop, and it'll plug it in. You've got favorites and recent locations, and you can plug that, you can send it to your phone, through your phone, and Google Maps to your car. Why that's important is because the map then will display the routing that you need to take, including all the necessary stops. So if I get in my car and say, navigate to Seattle, Washington, it will mark that whole path out, and it will tell me what all the places I need to stop and charge all the way there. So it takes all the guessing out of it. And it's really an important piece of the whole puzzle. It would be complicated without having that in the car. But you go in, you say, take me to Seattle, it puts all the chargers there, it estimates the arrival time at each charge, how long you have to stop and charge. It'll tell you what you'll have left at the destination, and it'll tell you how much you have if you return back to your starting point. And if you're going along and you don't have enough juice because you've run into a headwind or something, you'll receive on the warning on the screen telling you to slow down to save energy. So sometimes we're going down the interstate at 80 miles an hour, not realizing we're driving into a wind, and all of a sudden it'll say, lower your speed to 70 to get there. So we just simply slow down to 70. That saves enough electricity to get us home. That's been a nice safety feature. Kathy and I don't want to get stranded out there. We're probably a little more cautious about that. Legend has it that Don has coasted into his garage more than once. So I think he probably has more experience with it than we do.
That's only if I'm coming home and I know I can charge when I get here.
This is an example of what the screen looks like. You call it up, it'll give you navigation to your location, how far to each turn, how many miles, how many minutes, and it'll show you the charging stops along the way if you need to stop and charge. The Tesla superchargers, when I first heard the idea of the Tesla superchargers, I wasn't sure it made sense. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I think it's the thing that has given Tesla such an edge at this point, and it's the thing that is going to make it hard for other car companies to catch up. Frankly, they have at this point more than 20,000 chargers around the world. They're adding more every day, and in Nebraska, when we bought our cars, there were no chargers here. Now there's chargers in Lincoln and Grand Island and Gothenburg and Ogallala and Sydney, plus right across the border in Cheyenne and in Council Bluffs. So going up and down the interstate is really easy to do. The superchargers, you just simply back in, get out, plug it in, and go. You're seeing a lot of these things show up in places that are trying to draw business to them. Motels are they're putting in destination chargers that are designed to charge your car overnight. They don't cost anything. But businesses like grocery stores want to have the supercharger there because people tend to go to that grocery store, charge their car, and do their groceries at the same time. You've got that at Hy-Vee in Lincoln, but the last time I was in Kansas City, I did not find a supermarket that didn't have some kind of a DC fast charger with it. They're just putting them every place down there. When you plug it in, it will show you how fast it's charging, how many minutes are left to charge. You can change the level that you want to charge it to. Our Model 3s and Y now, when we get in, they will start charging at around 500 miles an hour in the supercharger. So you can put a charge on pretty fast. The superchargers are now all being upgraded, and that number will actually double. So when you get into one of the newer ones, it'll start charging about 1,000 miles an hour. So you can put an 80% charge on very, very quickly, and it's going to cut that time down significantly. You can also follow all of it on a smartphone. You can see when it's charging. You can stop the charging. You can change the level that it wants to charge on. In fact, you can do a lot of stuff on your smartphone. You've got climate you can change so that you can preheat your car when you get in. You can do a lot of the controls. You can summons the car. you can see your location of the car, which is kind of a two-edged sword. I can tell you from personal experience that this is a wonderful thing when you want to find out where your wife is, and a horrible thing when your wife wants to find out where you are. So you kind of have to learn to live with that. We're also starting to see more fast chargers being put in. Some of them are being done privately, but there is a concerted effort by the state at this point to get some in. The Nebraska Department of Energy and NPPD are putting in chargers in York, Columbus, and Norfolk. And those are DC fast chargers designed to connect us better with Highway 81 and Kansas. I think someone's put in fast chargers of some kind in Geneva and Aurora very recently. And NPPD was asking me questions about Valentine, Chadron, McCook, and Scotts Bluff. The state is starting to recognize it as being part of commerce. It's just like roads. You can't service an area if there aren't roads to an area. And it doesn't do any good to have roads if you don't have charging stations out there, as the whole world is going to change to electric cars. Electrify America is doing chargers all across the country. I don't quite know how to judge this, to be honest with you. Electrify America is owned by Volkswagen, and they're doing this in part as their punishment for falsifying records on their diesel. My experience with them hasn't been very good. And a lot of people are saying, well, they're waiting till the Volkswagens are out before they worry too much about how well these things work. But when I've been to them, usually the Chatamo version, which is what we use with the Tesla, it hasn't worked most of the time. And I've always had to make a call. Don, Jeff, have you had any experience with them?
Yes, I've had a similar experience. Occasionally they will work right off. They have gotten better lately, but often I've had to call in and get them start. I only use them just to try them out because I don't count on them yet.
I haven't even tried one yet, I guess.
I want to make a point. Rivian has also done a similar plan map, apparently. They claim they're planning 600 fast charging stations, similar to what Volkswagen has shown there too. So just FYI on that. So, but again, that's Rivian, and I don't think their cars are available currently, or if I'm not mistaken.
I've been anxious to see Rivian get on the market because getting pickups out will be a big thing, particularly in Nebraska. I've asked a lot of people, how often do you drive your pickup more than 500 miles a day? And the answer is almost never. And there are a lot of people out there that will make that switch when the vehicle finally gets here. So I think that's a big step when we get the pickups out. ChargePoint has a lot of level 2 charging out there. It's really kind of a important piece of the puzzle because they're much cheaper to put in. They're kind of safety nets, but we don't use them much for charging on long road trips because they're slow. But I have a lot of places where I go where I've got an hour meeting, and I find that putting a few miles on with a ChargePoint makes it easy. So you'll see more of that. I got The one time I got caught with not having enough energy was in Lincoln. I was dropping somebody off at the a Cornhusker Hotel, and for some reason I got in a wind at the end, and I wasn't going to have enough. And I thought, well, that's fine. I'll just stop at the Cornhusker and plug in. And I got there, and the plug-in didn't work at the Cornhusker. And I was down to just a few miles on my car. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I called up PlugShare on my phone to see if there was anything close. And there were more than a dozen charge point chargers within a mile of where I was. So I just picked one that was closest to the restaurant I wanted to eat at, went and had supper. By the time I was done, I was in good shape again. But PlugShare is an app that you'll use a lot to keep track of what's out there and what can help you. Go Anywhere is Tesla's online version of their screen. So you can go in and say, I want to go someplace, and it'll call it up and tell you what all the charging stations are along the way. The thing that is nice about the online version is that you can put in multiple stops. One of the problems that you have with the screen version is if you want to go to Minneapolis by virtue of Kansas City, it won't route that to you. You have to go to Kansas City and then figure out what the route is going back up. But if you go to Go Anywhere online, you can add another stop in here, and it'll pattern all that out for you so you can see what you've got. Another program that does that is a program called a Better Route Planner. This is available online or on your phone, on your smartphone, and you plug in which car you're driving, what you're starting with, and then it will calculate the route. So this, for example, is calculating from Lincoln to Minneapolis. If you go down the interstate, there's a charger at Council Bluffs. There's another one in Iowa. You skip both of those because you don't need them. And you go to the one in Des Moines. From there, you go up, you skip the first one in Iowa, and pick up the next one up in Minnesota. So it's telling you which ones you have to stop at and which ones you can just go by. And you have it when you get in the car will match up the same thing. And if you hit a headwind or something, the car will adjust for it, but you can kind of see what you have to do to make the trip. I made this trip last year from Lincoln, but I had to go up through Pender. So I took the back road. I had one stop. So from Lincoln to Minneapolis was one stop. So it's gotten pretty good. Self-driving. This is expanding day by day. Don, you probably know this better than I do. But the cars right now you can just double click the shift gear and it will go into self-driving mode. You see these little blue lines. At that point, the car is setting the speed, setting the direction. And it is, if you pull up behind a car, it'll slow down. It keeps you between the lines. Right now, you have to keep your hand on the wheel, which I find personally annoying because I have to wiggle it sometimes to make it work. My wife has a heavy enough hand. She doesn't have that problem, but I do. we're getting software updates on this, and the software is downloaded overnight while the car is sitting in the garage. Don, how far is this going to go?
That's a hard guess. I probably am less optimistic than many. I think it will continue to get better and better, which it is. There are always a few special cases that it runs into that I think you're going to have to help it. I have a little less optimism there than a lot of people out there, because it's a very difficult problem. They talk about corner cases or edge cases, which are things that you can't expect to run into. I think it will continue to get better. It has. When we first got it, I used to say it used to drive down the road like a drunken sailor. Now it does pretty well. It's very, very helpful to me out on the interstate.
At this point, it's picking up stop signs and speed signs and stop lights.
It is not, at least the version that we have, which is not the fanciest version, does not stop for those things. But the new versions, as I understand, will stop for the stoplights, will stop for the stop signs, and will continue through lights when they're green. It's getting significantly better all the time, and as you said, those are downloaded over there. It's noticeably better.
I tend to be a little pessimistic about how far this is going to go too, but that's because I practiced law for a while, and the tort cases just keep coming at me. I keep thinking you just run into that strange example of something that you're not expecting, where the white line isn't where it's supposed to be, or that sort of thing. But at the same time, a lot of times I find that the car is quicker than I am.
Yeah.
By the time I see that there's a problem, the car is already taken care of it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be gained with it. And I'm shocked how much difference it makes in how tired you are when you drive.
Definitely that.
When I have to drive the car all the time, I just have a lot of tension. And when I have it in auto here, I find I'm spending more time looking at the road ditches, trying to figure out where the deer is going to come from, than I normally would. And my field of vision spreads out a little bit, and I'm just a whole lot less tense. But we're a long ways, I think, from being able to take a nap.
Yes, I agree with you entirely, and I find that driving on the highways, it's much more relaxing. You can put your hands down off the wheel for 20 seconds, and that rests your shoulders, your arms, and hands. I'm not nearly as tired after a day's drive.
All right, we got a few quick questions, and we're going to probably have to wrap up soon. How much power does the heater and air conditioner use for the against your battery charge?
That's a good question. I don't have a rule of thumb for that. Don, do you? Or
I don't have any real numbers, but the heating in the winter does take off a significant amount of charge.
I find that you save a lot if you use the heated seat instead of the heater. And like my Model X has a huge windshield on it. And I have more problem with the air conditioning there than I do with the heater a lot of times. Because the air conditioning takes up a lot of is fighting that solar gain through the windshield. But it is significant.
Yes.
I think it's fair to say it is significant. That's why you have to kind of look at what it's doing on the car. Some of the route planners actually, I think at this point, check the weather before they give you the numbers. So they try and adjust for what it is.
All right. Do you anticipate parking space problems at charging stations when electric cars become more common, or have you already experienced that in places like Kansas City where they are more common?
Don, you've got California experience.
I have found superchargers in California that were full. The thing that I found, there's one, it's getting better because they've increased the number of chargers out there. There was one charger in Mountain View, California, several years ago that they actually had a attendant from Tesla that was helping people stay in line waiting. And there was a short line waiting for this supercharger. And I thought, oh, this is going to be bad. But it wasn't bad because the charging is so fast that the cars are coming and going just like at a gas station. And I didn't have to wait more than about 5 minutes before I got a charger. So it can be an issue in places where there are a lot of cars. And it can be an issue when there's a lot of cars on the road, but I've seldom run into it even in California.
I think the largest charging station in California now has 56 stalls.
I think that's correct.
So, you know, they keep adding stalls to the stations and adding more stations. But I think they are really relying on a lot of people, most people doing their charging at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the chargers are really mostly useful mostly used on the road.
The Myers have asked, they've noticed that there's virtually no charging stations of any type in north central and northwestern Nebraska, like you said before, in Valentine and Chadron. Do you have any idea when and if more will be installed in that area? Is there anything on the table right now for having some there?
The state has been trying to work through that. They did an application this year based on information that they'd gathered last year at their electric vehicle seminar that they had, and that's how they ended up doing Norfolk, Columbus, and York, because that was all part of the 81 corridor. I think that the next year's talk was, those are supposed to go in this June. I think next year's talk was talking about Chadron, Valentine, and McCook. So my guess is you'll see them in another year. But that's just guess. But I know it's on their radar screen at this point.
Terry Davidson said Nebraska charged an additional fee as part of the licensing cost. Is that likely to change soon?
If it changes, it's going to go up because there's been some discussion about electric cars have gotten, because we skip all the gas tax. You know, we don't pay gas tax at all. And the theory was they would charge us some fee when we bought the cars, but licensed the cars. But they started to do some comparison and discovered that we're not paying near as much as people who are buying gas. And as more and more electric cars come on the market, they're going to be shorter and shorter of highway funds every year. So if it changes, it's going to go up.
Do you think they'll increase the wheel tax because of that?
I think so. There's a lot of cost in road maintenance out there that's really a problem for the state. I think you're going to see wheel tax and gas tax probably both should go up, frankly.
Okay. And Terry also asked, he'd like to install a solar charging station for his garage. He's wondering if there's a DIY information out there or to help him plan this. I don't know anything about solar, so
that's a
you're
Jeff
the expert.
Want me to take it?
Yes.
Oh, you can definitely try to do it yourself. You can install the panels and the racking and stuff, but in Nebraska, the interconnection agreements are pretty robust for most of the utilities, and you have to have a licensed electrician make the final connections. We've had customers put up their own panels and racking, and then we come in and finish it. But most of the time, it's easier just to have the electrician do the whole thing. Just make sure you've got that interconnection agreement with your equipment listed before you do anything, or the utilities will usually come down on you pretty hard. If you're off grid, that's a different system. Obviously, you don't have to worry about the interconnects.
I got another question. I'm assuming Don and Jeff would be able to answer this. What is the outlook as far as in electric pickup trucks? Farmers who have land and they could put solar panels on. Interesting question about electric pickup.
I didn't hear that question very well.
What is the outlook as far as electric pickup trucks? We know Tesla has theirs and Rivian, but what's the outlook for like Chevy and others?
I think there's going to be a lot more electric pickups out there. Ford has already announced an electric 150 Ford pickup, and that will probably be out within a year or two. Of course, Rivian will be out very soon. The Tesla Cybertruck will be out there. There's also a couple other, can't remember the name of them, Lordstown, I think. There's going to be a number of pickups show up, I think, within the next year or two.
I have a question here. We had a question on Facebook. When they purchased their HP EV, Nebraska had no incentives, state or local, or rebates for them. Likewise, Lincoln Electric did not either. Do you see any future incentives for Nebraskans to buy electric vehicles? And they have a Kia Niro.
I think so. There's some out there. OPPD has something now. LES had something before. MPPD had a smaller program. It doesn't seem to be consistent, but gosh, doesn't OPPD have like a $8,200 incentive right now?
I don't know. They had one for a short time. I don't know if it's still going or not.
I think the major incentive is going to be that the cost of the cars are going down to the point where eventually they're going to cross over anyway. Costs of batteries are going down very rapidly. And I think within the next couple of years, we're going to see the cost of electrics, even the first cost less than gas cars.
It's interesting how that's working, because they're following the pattern of computers or big screen TVs, where the price is going down, and we've never seen that in the automotive industry before. Each year, the cost of a car has gone up, And now we're actually seeing them drop on the electric side, aren't we?
That's true.
I have a question for my own interest. Bluebird school buses have a bus that goes 120 miles range. Do you think any public schools in Nebraska, public school districts, will get on board with electric buses soon? I mean, they're available. And apparently, a North Sacramento school district bought went all electric, and they went with a different brand. They went with Lion, and they got their buses for 55 grand a piece. Do you think school buses will be electric before, other things in the school district?
I'm guessing it's going to be driven by cost. If they conclude it's cheaper to run them than it is for gas, they'll switch. I think the schools need to be pushed a little. I was trying to push ours just a bit. We have schools that are still teaching for an automotive industry that's going to change dramatically. And I think that we need to have our schools recognizing that the electric vehicle is going to be, by the time these kids get out of school, the electric vehicle is going to be the future. And they need to be training kids how to work on EVs instead of how to work on internal combustion engines. If they make that switch, they'll probably start switching to electric buses. It's all part of the same mentality. But it doesn't strike me as the kind of thing that my schools out in the 3rd district would put as a very high priority.
Yeah, I was thinking like small schools in eastern Nebraska that really don't have to travel that far to go to sporting events or anything. Like, say, like Humphrey, they probably max goes 50 miles away for any event outside of like state competitions. It kind of, to me, was like, it kind of makes sense. You don't have a lot of buses. You probably have 3 or 4. You're a small school. It kind of makes a little bit more sense to go with the electric when you're not using your bus for more than 50 miles a day.
Makes a lot of sense.
I think the bus situation is running a little bit behind the car situation. There aren't very many buses available yet. And the uptake has been quite slow, but I think we're seeing an increase like we did cars 10 years ago.
I think right now there's just so much effort being put on the low-hanging fruit. And by low-hanging fruit, I mean the most sales, but also the greatest impact on carbon. And that's probably the family-owned vehicle that's driving down the road with one person in it, as opposed to a bus. So I think all the batteries are being designated for that, and all the energy is going into that. And I think buses are kind of seen in some regards as a specialty niche or a small part of that big puzzle, and will all come later.
Okay. Do you have more on your presentation?
No, I'm pretty much through what I had to say. Don, Jeff, what did I miss here?
Well, I would add to your statement about traveling long distances. We have traveled virtually all over the United States many times with our Teslas, and access to the superchargers is just very easy. I'm kind of an old decrepit guy. I had stopped driving long distances until we got a Tesla. We have been to California and back 7 times with our Teslas over the last 8 years. We missed last year because of COVID. We've been to Virginia 2 or 3 times. We've been to Houston. Traveling on the interstates, traveling on the highways, even traveling across other highways besides the interstates is very easy. My son is going to come here this weekend to visit us from California again in his Model 3.
We do have a question. If you ever surprise pedestrians with how quiet you're with your quiet EV, like when they're crossing the street or something?
You broke up a bit there, Eric. I couldn't hear that.
Oh, he's asking, have you surprised pedestrians who are crossing the street with your quiet car?
I didn't understand the question. I didn't hear it well.
He's asking if we surprise people or sneak up on people with our quiet cars. I haven't on the street, but I do it all the time in the parking lots. If you're driving through the parking lot at Walmart, they don't know you're behind them. So
In
I
my
usually
neighborhood,
sit there patiently.
it's the birds. I sneak up on a lot of birds that just stand there on my residential street.
Yeah, you have to be alert because people don't hear you coming.
All right. I have one more question. It's really quick. Do you think fleet sales will make up a large percentage of GM's electric future? Oh, it's kind of GM specific, but
I know that Ford is, the majority of, or a lot of the Ford F-150s are fleet sales now, and I know that's what Ford's aiming at. In our company, we've got 15 or so trucks now, and I know that we would be, we're a small fleet, but it's all going to come down to those maintenance costs, and the electric vehicles prove their lower maintenance pretty quick, and I think it's going to be a huge part of their plan.
okay. Right, I think that's going to wrap it up for tonight. Thank you guys very much for coming, and thank you, Cliff and Jeff and Don, for coming. There is going to be a quick 2-question survey as you exit right now, before you exit, and it would help us out a lot. So if you do this.